Okay, we'll go ahead and call this special meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, right at 3 p.m. On behalf of the City Council, just want to welcome you guys here today. And we have two things on the agenda to discuss today. And just want to thank you guys for coming out and taking part of our city business. So for the first item on the agenda, discuss appointment of vacant city council member seat. So I have an idea, and staff has come up with an application and also more details about this process. I have an idea to go forward with an application process. This process will take about 2 weeks to complete. Then after the 2-week period is completed, myself and the council will go through these applications, fill these applications, and we will select top candidates to come in and do a Q&A forum in front of the public view. I think this is the most transparent and honest way to do it. I think this is the best way to do it. And I just wanted to come out and just go ahead and state that I feel like this is the most honest, fair, transparent way where the public will get to have a little input on who we choose to fill the vacant seat, but also staff as well. So staff will be able to ask these potential candidates questions, and then we can go from there.
Would like a motion, Mayor?
Yeah, if there's a motion on the floor.
I'll put a form of the motion to consider an application process. Put that in the form of a motion.
Okay, motion made by Mayor Pro Tem George Ballou. Is there a second? Okay, second made by Councilmember Bill Taylor. Any further discussion on the motion?
I'd like to discuss it, too.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Walker.
I think we already know who we're pretty much interested in being a councilman. I think that you're trying to say transparency, and I agree with what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a process like this may be a little more, that we might be biting off a little more than we could chew. What is the normal process? And I'd like to bring the attorney in on this. What has been the normal process of something like this?
Normal's hard to define because it is entirely up to the council what procedure it wants to use. Some councils choose to do it. You come to this meeting, you've decided, and you go forward with it on a motion and a vote. But right now, what's on the floor is a motion to do what is now being described as an application process before you make a determination.
Okay, now what are the qualifications for a city councilman?
There are several, and I believe that there is a sheet on that, but it has to be someone who could have voted for himself, okay? In other words, a registered voter that is qualified. There are the same criteria used for whether you can vote or not, or essentially, and I'm simplifying it because it's easier to simplify, are the same qualities that you can choose somebody from. So if they're not a registered voter, they couldn't vote for themselves or have somebody else vote for them here, they would not qualify.
So would you have to be 18, be a citizen?
That's correct. It would have to be the same thing for voting requirements.
Okay.
All right.
Had to be 21?
This one says 21.
21 is correct.
So you have to be 21 and a citizen?
Yes. Stay within city limits.
And able
Okay.
to vote.
Yep.
I have a couple of concerns. First one being, I have a hard time putting a request on someone that I did not have to do. There's not a person sitting up here on this council that had to fill out an application and be interviewed to be considered to be a city councilman. That's the first piece. The second piece is they're supposed to get 2,000 applications. How do you decide who should and should not be interviewed?
It's criteria.
What is going to be the criteria? The criteria is 21 years old and live in Morehead City. That's a lot of people in this town. So I don't think that doing something like this, we're not, if we're interviewing for a job, usually you have minimum qualifications. To me, if we're going to make it an election, the only people that could elect anybody are the citizens. We're here to appoint someone, okay? Now, there's a big difference, because I find it very hard to determine who should be elected. Now, the way that I did my assessment is I looked at those who have already filed in the last 2 elections. Those were the people who I had considered to be a pool to choose from. And out of that pool, we look at maybe making a selection out of that pool. But to open it up as a job, what are we going to use as criteria to choose who and who not to choose? I don't think we can do that. Any citizen in this town that's 21 and is qualified. So I'm trying to figure out how are we going to use, or what criteria is going to be used to select someone. Now, I would look at those who have run in the past. There's options that people who had run and were not successful, they can be considered as a group. Now, that minimizes your group. That narrows it down to those who are interested. But to blow this up, to do something like this, to me, I don't agree with it. I don't think it's cost effective. I don't think it's efficient, and I don't think it's fair. Because
Do you think it's transparent, though?
transparent, that's fine. But I'm saying not one of us up here, not one, including you, Mayor, had to fill out an application.
That was a whole different scenario.
No.
Yeah, it was.
We're talking about filling a councilman's seat.
We had to file to run, and we were
That's
elected by the citizens.
That's exactly right. So I'm saying go back to that same group of people who filed. Is that me? Excuse me. I'm sorry, please. I just hope it don't ring.
Councilmember Walker, I have a question for you.
Yes,
The
sir.
first thing you said that we all know who we're gonna choose, or
No.
you said something to the effect of we have an idea of who we want to choose. Now, are you speaking for the whole council?
No. I don't recall saying it in the way that you're directing. What I'm saying is we know who have been interested, okay? And by being interested are those who have filed in the past. So that's how I had come up with a selection process, because I was saying to myself, let me look at who has filed in the past, in your election, in my election, and so in my term, we had, I think that gentleman, he ran with us, okay?
And what other ways are you basing your criteria on when you decide if we're gonna take the route that you're suggesting, nominating someone?
Well,
What are you basing your personal criteria on?
I'm saying because it's given as the council's responsibility to appoint the position, okay? And so that's what I'm using as a criteria. It's no different than what you're doing, only yours is gonna be macro. You're gonna have, it just does not make, to me, to turn around and open this up as we're trying to employ someone. When you put out an application process, you should have certain criteria, certain qualifications, how do you choose? How do you determine whether or not a person is qualified or not? When all of us are qualified. I just don't feel it's fair, okay, for us to relinquish our responsibilities. This is our responsibility as a council, okay? Now, this is what we're supposed to do, okay? Now, we could be transparent in doing it, but I don't think we need to go out there and make it a social media circus. If we get 2,000 or 3,000 applicants, who is going to sit there and go through that?
Well, it's our job to do that. If
Why-
we choose to take that route,
Yeah, but,
these citizens put, like you said, they put us in these seats to handle business with their tax dollars. If we get 2,000 applicants, and if the council got to go through 2,000 applications, then we need to take the time to do it. I'm just saying this is the most fair process, because I've seen too many times where people get up here and they say, well, I want to nominate this person. Come to find out, this person is their personal friend. I want to nominate my personal friend or a colleague, somebody I know personally.
So what you're asking is to have another election.
What I'm asking is to go through this application process. We
Well,
take the time.
why have an application? Why don't you just put your name down? What
Go-
kind of application? Just go out there and say, sign this list. If you're 18 or 21, sign the list.
We have to go through an application process because the candidates can't just put their name down because they can stay outside of city limits. We need them to fill out an application that we have right here before us, that staff created, where we can look at the address, determine whether or not they stay in the city limits. And as long as they check all these boxes, then they'll go through the process to be considered. This is the most fair, honest, and transparent way to do it. We have staff here that can help us with this process. And to me, this is the best way to do it. And also doing a public Q&A, once we go through the applications and we choose top candidates, having a public Q&A, the public gets to come here to look at the form, and they can see how these potential candidates are conducting and handling themselves in the public view, and they get to have some input. When we do it your way that you're suggesting, the public doesn't have no input at all.
From what I understand, that it's supposed to be our choice here as the council, okay? That we do it. Whether we do it with 5 candidates, whether we do it with 2 candidates, whether we do it with 1,000. It's the council's decision. Now, my thing is to open it up like we're interviewing for a job, okay? To me, that can, wait, so you say you're gonna open it up for 30 days?
No, 2 weeks.
All right, you're gonna do 2 weeks. All right, so you're gonna sit there and we're gonna see how many applicants we gonna get to apply to be a city councilman. And you're saying that if we get 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, that you think that that is cost effective to the city, because the city has to run its business. So you're saying until that process is over, and then we have to make a selection, okay? Now, right now, I've heard there's about 5 people who have been considered, who I think are pretty good qualified people, okay? Then out of that 5, we ought to be able to make a decision. But if we can't make a decision on 5, how are you going to make a decision on 200 or 300? I'm saying it just doesn't make sense to me to give up the responsibility of this council to do what you're saying is transparent. Everything's going to be transparent. Everything's going to be transparent.
So how's it gonna be transparent if you have already have in your mind that you got a preferred candidate?
No, it's not a preferred candidate. What I did, I made a selection. I went through the whole list, okay, of people. Now, I don't have one candidate. I've got several, okay? But I used that list because I didn't know that we were gonna open it up to the phone book, okay? I use those people who I know. Now, Mr. Monteleone ran. I mean, he ran in our race.
Now, is he on your list?
He's a possibility because he already ran.
Because I think you said you were basing this on whether people have ran in the former elections.
He ran in the form of the
And
election.
that's what I'm saying, so that's why I was asking, is he on your list? What are you basing your criteria on?
Everybody that ran was a possibility. Everybody, okay? Because that's the short list. That's the list who I know of people who, that's what I was gonna bring to the council. Was this, that was my list. But for you now to wanna create a phone book list, or a list that we have no idea, you can't, in my opinion, disqualify anyone. Not anyone, given the criteria that you have to be 21 and a citizen. That's it, baby. I don't care if you're a PhD, a MBA, or RAA, whatever, okay? And, or some other things, okay? GED, it don't matter, okay? So my point is, let's go with who we already know has shown interest. But if they want to run next time in 2 years, fine. But to open this up like that, to me, is not going to be, it's going to tie up the city. It's going to slow us down in doing our job, okay? And I just don't see how you can disqualify anybody. If anybody applies, I just don't see how.
Well, with any job process, when HR
Well, who's going to do the interview? All of us going to do the interview? I got a job. I can tell you right now. I am not sitting down for 300 or 400.
Nobody said we were gonna do 300 or 400 interviews.
Well,
We
but
said
you
we
don't
were
know
gonna
how
go
many.
through the applications and pick out a top, whether it be 5, 7, 10, whatever it may
Yeah, but
be.
what are you going to use, Mr. Mayor? What are you going to use? How are you going to choose who are the top 5? How are you going to do that?
There's a lot of different ways we can choose. Like I said, we can work with our staff.
Well, no.
And we can look at-
I'm asking you, yeah. Think this through, Mayor. Criteria. 21, live in Morehead. End of story. If every one of those people meet that minimum criteria, how are you going to choose?
Well, let's say, okay, we got some applicants. We go through these applications, and some of these individuals have good experience. They done served on the planning board, board of adjustment.
But that's
whatever it
not
may
part of
be.
that's not part of the requirement.
But that's
that's-
up for us to decide. That's why
No,
we're
no,
gonna
no,
work
no,
with
no,
our
no, no.
staff.
The law says, look, wait a minute. The law says that person only has to have those qualifications. We can't put those on the qualifications. If we do that, that's not fair.
You don't
We
think-
cannot do that. The law says you only have to be 21. Everybody up here had to go through that, even you. 21 and be a citizen. That's all the law says. It does not say if you got planning board background. It does not say if you got a board of adjustment background. It doesn't say any of that.
No, it doesn't, but I said we can implement those things after working with staff and basing, our decision on a certain
It's not-
criteria.
Hold on. It's not the staff's responsibility. It's this council's responsibility.
But that's why we got a staff, because we can work with our staff on this.
So you're asking them now to figure out a way. Excuse me.
And can you
Can I
just
insert
cut that on
something?
vibrate, Councilmember Walker?
Can I?
Hold on just a minute. I just had cataract surgery, so I can't really read. So I'm trying to figure out how to turn my phone off. And
Mayor, can I insert a couple of things?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Walker,
Mayor Pro Tem.
The reason I made the motion, Mr. Mayor, and I did not know about this application. I have been contacted by many people that are interested in this job, in the position, the vacant position, and I didn't know what to tell them because I didn't know how we were going to go through the process, how we were going to fill the process, and then when the mayor brought up this idea, I said, well, you know what, maybe that's the way to do that. Because how are we going to,
Bless you.
if I have a person and you have a person and Councilman Abel and Councilman Taylor has a person, and then it's all going to be, I just don't see how we're going to be transparent by doing that. This way, we got individuals that are going to fill out.
wait.
Let me finish,
Yeah, okay.
if I may. We got individuals that's going to fill out this application, and they're going to submit these applications. My idea is I think that the 5 of us have one pick. If we get 100 applications, if we get 500 applications, if we get 1,000, each one of us get one pick, and then take the 5 and narrow it down, and have a Q&A with those 5 and try to narrow it down in that process. But I did not come in here today with any particular person in mind. I don't owe anybody anything. I have not discussed giving my vote to any person. I have talked to people, but I've not committed to anyone. And I just don't know how any other fair way to do this than to have a process and look for the best qualified person. And Mr. Walker, I understand what qualifications are we going to use. That's why the people elected us, to make those decisions. I'm looking for the best person because I've got to give that person my one vote to appoint them in that position. So I'm going to take the 5 people, if we narrow it down, each one of us get one vote, and narrow it down to 5. Bring them in here, have a Q&A, have the public hear. Let the public hear them, and then take those 5 and narrow it down and have one pick from those 5. I just don't know how any other transparent way to do that so it's open to everybody, that I don't have a friend, and I'm not saying I do because I've not obligated myself to anybody, but I've got a friend that wants to serve, so I'm going to have to try to come in here, and I'm going to have to try to get 3 more votes, and I'm going to have to convince 3, or he's going, or she is going to have to convince 3 more people, well, this is who George wants, so this is who George is going to put on this appointment. That's what I'm trying to avoid.
Okay.
That's why I'm looking for the application process to make it fair. Each one of us gets a pick, narrow it down, and come to one, to the best qualified applicant. That was the reason I made the motion.
Okay, now, after you just said all what you just said,
Yes, sir.
you're gonna still be right at where you're at right now, because the same problem is gonna be right there, because you still have to make that decision, okay? I mean, my point is, from what I've heard, okay, I've always heard that the board makes that selection, okay? Now, the other option is we go to those who have already run, okay? You already know they have an interest. That shortens the list, okay? If the person ran, he wasn't successful, then the board knows that we got somebody who's interested. That's transparent. I just don't see, and I have never heard, that you fill out an application, and when the application, and like you said, all the application is going to put on there is, you're going to let them know a person whether or not you're 18 or 21, and if you live in Morehead City. That's the only thing that you can put on the application. Any other criteria that we use, to me, is not good business. I just don't think that that's the way
But
to
Mr.
go.
Walker, we don't require it, but we ask for individuals that would like to serve on our planning board,
Yes.
our Board of Adjustments,
Yes.
or Parks and Rec Advisory Board. We ask them
We
to
do.
fill out questions
We do.
and present that, so that way we have something that we could look to, where they live, I mean, what civil background, legal status, conflict of interest. I mean, we ask them that, so, we do ask them as far as planning board members and Board of
I
Adjustments.
understand, but we're talking about a councilman job now.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a few comments.
Yes, sir. Councilman Taylor.
Oftentimes, particularly lately, we use transparency to sound back. It sounds great. But that's not really why I'm interested in this discussion of, do we want to do it the way we've always done it, or do we want to try to open it up? My concern is I've gotten several emails that have been directed to me, as well as calls and, personal conversations on the street of people that asked about it or voiced concerns about it. But they have never officially said in some way that I want to be considered for the appointment. I am not talking about an election. This is taking a group of people that have said, I raised my hand. I want to do it. I want to make sure I've got all of them included. There's 2 emails that I've got that, I'll be honest, I don't know from Adam's house cat who they are or anything about them. Now, if they're serious, what's wrong with them having some mechanism to tell me officially and tell me a little bit about what they've done in the city? Now, at that point, I feel like I haven't left anybody out. That should be our number one goal, not to leave anybody out. The second point I would make is that I don't think we need to bring them in for a Q&A session. We have appointed on the planning board, the recreation advisory committee, other formal groups, advisory capacity, that we take off of those stated desires and we appointed and selected using criteria that's important to me as a councilman, and we haven't said anything about the council ought to be considering. You look at Harvey Skills and George's and Lee's and mine, we all come from different backgrounds. My criteria rest heavily on experience. It also rests on, we have a vacancy. We have a very important subcommittee that needs a representative. And we do deal with technical subjects. So if they have experience and direct knowledge, I'd like to know about it. But not bring them in for a question and answer system. Make sure we got all the names, have something that tells us about their background, and I am more than willing to make the decision for the appointment. That ain't that complicated. But we haven't left anybody out. And we made sure we captured in good faith the folks that want to be considered. So I see it as a hybrid. I don't think we're going to have 2,000 applications. We don't have 2,000 applications for a damn election. We're lucky to get that many to come out. So don't blow it up way beyond proportion. If we end up with 6 names, I think that's reasonable to expect, and we can make a decision. So for that point, I don't mind having a little application to fill out. I don't mind putting it on the website. Say, if you're interested, fill it out. If you're not, keep quiet and proceed. It may add a little time, but it's not this horrendous process. So that's my thoughts on it.
Any thoughts, Councilmember Abel?
Yeah, I do. I agree with what Harvey and Bill just said. We can't bring these people in for the public to ask them questions. I don't think it's fair of them. Now, just remind everybody, this position is going to be filled. That position will come up, you might as well say in a year and a half. It would have been 2 years ago back in November or December when the swearing in happened. But a year and a half, and that person needs to, if he wants to run, my position, Bill's position, and that vacant position will be open in a year and a half. Then that person can file for that position, then answer the questions that he has to the public. More than likely, there's going to be a public forum where people can ask questions just like they did with the 3 of us back almost over 2 years ago. But to have the public to be able to ask them about a certain, I disagree with that. I really do. And I also, the last time this happened was, I think, Councilman Ballou, you were you were on the planning board at the time, if I'm not badly mistaken, and former Councilman Floyd Chadwick passed in office. And the council then decided to try to find an applicant or a person who wasn't necessarily wanting to run for that term when it was over with. And I actually reached out to a couple of people that I asked if they would consider it, and knowing that they did not or would not run in 2 years, and they basically told me, I'm not going to touch it with a 10-foot pole. So that's kind of where I was going at. I certainly disagree. I don't know. I think we're going to have more applicants than what some of y'all think that we're going to have. And this just, George, I think you said it, everybody picking one. So then you got 5 that you got to whittle it down to. We're back in the same position.
Just for clarification, Councilmember Abel, I don't mean for the public to ask them questions.
Okay.
If we were to narrow it down to 5, if they were to come to an open meeting like we are sitting here today, and they were to come to the podium and introduce themselves to the council, and if we had any questions for them in open transparency, but by no means do I think that we should have a forum
Okay.
where the public is opened up. I was saying if, and just a suggestion, that's why we're having this meeting today, to discuss how we're going to fill this position. I don't think anybody's got their mind made up, but again, to have an open meeting like this and bring, if we choose, if there's 5 choices, narrow it down and have them come to the podium and have some dialogue between all of us to them, but not open it up to the public to ask questions, just for clarification.
Mayor, if I may,
Yes, sir.
can the clerk read back what motion was actually made? And pull it,
Yes, Madam
do
Clerk.
it to me, pull the mic to you so we can hear you.
The motion on the floor is to have an application process.
Period.
That's all.
Okay.
May I?
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
I didn't understand it being quite that simple, but I am content with that we advertise an application process that gives some background. And it stops, and we fall into the council position of making our decisions and making the appointment.
And we
I'm
need,
comfortable.
And Councilman Taylor, the only reason I made the motion just to have the application process is to start discussion. We can certainly tweak the motion to whatever we want to add to it, but I made the motion just to go through the application process to start conversation. So we can certainly tweak it, to narrow it down to 5, or how we're going to go through the process. We can do that,
well,
I
it's
do
got-
if the council is okay with it.
Well, we've already got similar, we've almost got an application process now, but we're not formalizing it. And the reason why I say that, there's people who contacted you, Bill. There are people that contacted you, George, contacted you, and contacted me. Now, all we haven't done is written it down. Okay? So what I'm saying is, people have already made efforts to let you know that they're interested. Now, I'm with what George just said and what Bill just said. I don't think that we need to grill them, put them through a Q&A. To me, it's going to be difficult to me, and for me to try to interview someone and do something that I didn't have to do. To run for office, all we had to do is go over there and pay $5 and campaign. We're now going to ask someone in the general public to come in here and interview for a job, basically. I have a problem with that, because I did not have to do that. Okay? And so therefore, I don't think it's fair to push it on someone else when I did not have to do that myself. I think that's hypocrisy. I think that's not right. Okay? And I'll yield We go back to the floor.
And Mr. Mayor, my only reason for asking that question is if you vote, all you're voting on is to
Application.
accept applications. You have not decided how you're going to decide to weed it. That's a bad word under the circumstances. Narrow the list down to people that you want to further process, and how you're going to do that is yet to be determined. Right now, it's just, if you have an interest, send us an application. You ultimately will have to make a decision. How you decide that is entirely up to you, just like this process is. But right now, the motion on the floor is to accept applications for those interested in that vacancy.
Let me ask you one more other question. Now, when you deal with applications, does this open us up to liability if someone says that you didn't elect me because I am, or I was, if they're not selected? I mean, are we opening ourselves up to something like that?
There's two ways to answer that. One is, does it open us up to a lawsuit? Possibly. Does it open us up to liability? A court has to determine if we're liable for doing it the way we're doing it. So if right now you have a great deal of discretion on who you put on the council.
Right.
All it takes is for three of you to say, I want Joe Blow, and it's done.
Right.
Okay? The application process requires you to whittle it down to a group that you can discuss. You have to do that discussion in open session, like this one here, to get to the person that you need. Whatever methodology you want to use, you can use because it's within your discretion. You cannot use criteria for selection somebody that would violate any of the constitutional issues based on race, creed, color, religion, or any of those other things, but
But
you're
that becomes a particular,
That's
That's
a
what I
different
thought.
issue than
That's-
what you're, I
that's
think
what I
you're
thought.
asking, you really should be making your decision on what you think is a qualified individual to sit there with you for, as it was pointed out, less than 2 years, that has the interest of the town moving forward, does not have any allegiance to anything but what the city needs, wants, recognize what that is, and finding that individual won't be easy, but that is the criteria you should use to fill that job as a council person, is somebody that the public might have voted for if given an opportunity to fill that seat. Doesn't have to be somebody that registered before, could be somebody that moved here, we don't know, but your criteria to be safe should be justifiable. Don't just snatch up one and say, this is my guy, have a reason for it.
but you answered my question. It does open us up to legal options.
Anything you do,
That's what I
including
thought.
walking outside that door, could subject you to some litigation. I
That's what
have
I
to give you both the answer, can you be sued, and the answer is also, would you lose if you got sued?
But Mr. Taylor, aren't we facing those same consequences when we appoint people to the Planning Board, Board of Adjustments, and the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board?
It's a little heightened because we're talking about what is normally an elected position and not a committee. Committee, you can shift the members around, you can do things, but once the person is in that elected position, which is a council person, you can't remove them without extraordinary means. So if you mess up over here, it's okay. You mess up over here, you're not okay.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't know that the simplest thing to do, and I know there's a motion on the floor, and I guess we'll get to it in a minute, but this, for discussion purposes, kind of what Harvey was saying, kind of what Bill was saying, I guess, and probably somewhat you were saying, George, is that we've all have been contacted by at least 2 or 3 individuals personally, and we have all, as far as I know, all received some emails from also folks that were interested, okay, that maybe not have personally contacted anyone singularly. So why not take that list and let that list be the ones that we look at, and then go from there? And if the case goes, Mr. Mayor, that we put all those together, and because number one, you know, we got a time constraint here, we really do, and every one of us know that. Y'all know that out there as well. we've got the budget that's getting ready to come up that we've got to solidify, by the June meeting, and we got to work through that. I don't know that there's enough time to be able to do exactly what you're trying to get at, Mr. Mayor. But I think we could probably mirror those names that we have, along with the emails, and then come up with, you know, some format, because we really need to get on the ball. This 2 weeks, you know, talking about 2 weeks to be closing it, then you're gonna have to give us, you know, depending on how many applicants come in, some time to look over these things. But I just think that's a quagmire. I really do. That's just my personal opinion.
I think that doing as I suggested, that we make sure we have given everybody an opportunity to throw their name in the hat. And then as a council, meet to appoint the person based on their little application that tells me a little bit about them. I don't want to have just that I know your name and I know you sent me an email and you have an interest. I think all that can be done within 3 weeks. 2 weeks to get the names in, meet the next week, discuss it, and select the appointee. Ms. Southard gave us the motion, which is simply get the process going, get the names in. That's pretty basic, and I think that's what we should put up for vote. And the question and answer and all that elaborate stuff goes away. We are still doing what we're basically doing, is getting a list together. That's it.
So what do we do with the list?
You look at the application, and you're making, in your mind, you have different criteria for why you pick George or Bill or whoever than I have. And you're gonna pick the person that you think fits our need, and we can work together in harmony and get the job done.
So you're proposing to take all the applications, once we get them, and then come back to a council meeting,
Like we normally would.
like we normally would, and just put a name into nomination and see if we can get a second and 3 votes on anyone on the application process.
Yep, but we ensure that we haven't let anybody out.
Haven't left anybody
And I
out.
have a little bit more knowledge than Henry Smith, which I don't know from Adam's house cat, has an interest. That's not fair to his request. And I honestly don't know where those letters go or how they'll form into the other process. And I don't think it adds a lot of time. So why not do that?
Bill, I don't like the application process for the very reason, the legal problems that it could present. I would rather generate a list, but not an application process. When you start doing stuff like that, you're opening yourself up. Because an application, I can turn around and say, you didn't do it because I got a mole on my left side of my face. Because that's my application, okay? I don't want to put us in a situation where we can become liable, or the very transparency that you're opening up can turn around and bite us, because somebody says, oh, you didn't select me because I was crippled. You didn't select me because I was blind. You didn't select me because I'm a woman. When you start putting yourself in that situation, that's not good. We should not be going there. Now, my suggestion, if we're going to do it, create a list. You know, if you're interested in wanting to be on the city council, call this number. Have the clerk take the name, or something like that. But to make a formal application where a person can turn around and put that against us, I mean, I can't believe you're hearing the man tell you, we can make it and put ourselves in a situation where we could possibly get sued. I mean, we could, and we're dealing with that, with a situation that this is our responsibility, okay? And it's just like, I think, Richard, you hit the nail on the head. We all have names. I like what George said. We all have names. Let's use those names that people have contacted, or if you want to do it, make an announcement tonight. If you want to be considered for the city council, contact your city council member. But I am totally against creating an application process.
Well, I think the ones that, again, I don't mean to cut you off, the ones who've expressed interest have either already made verbal conversation with somebody up here or via an email. That's your interest group right
Right
there.
now, I'm with you.
And I don't mind to say, I'm trying to count up in my mind, 3, 6, probably 7 people that have reached out to me either verbally or through an email, and those emails, I think, comes to all of us because they were sent to all the councilmen. At least 7. So you got 7. You know, Bill may have 5. He might not check his email like I do. I'm just picking on you. So you got, and some of those names, some of the names are going to be the same. But that's what I'm saying is put those down on a list. And then Bill puts his on a list. Mayor, you put yours down. Councilman Lou, you put yours down, and Mr. Walker puts his down, and we'll come together in another few days or next week and put that list together, and then just see what happens, see what shakes out, because some of them are going to be weeded out, period, just because, I say weeded out. Some of them are going to be, what's the word I'm looking for? In other words, the 5 of us right now may have the same names on those lists, so you know that obviously they stand a pretty good chance of being appointed. But I think the time constraint is going to get us. I really do.
Mr. Attorney? You've heard the discussion.
Do we,
Tell us one more. You've
I-
heard it.
I would
Talk to us, Derek.
The motion on the floor is to accept applications. It passes or fails based on the vote that you take on that particular issue. Everything else you've talked about is not on the table. Unless the motion is withdrawn, then the decision is going to be made. Do you ask for applications for that seat or not? Black and white at this point. Everything else is another alternative, and somebody would have to withdraw the motion, or you don't get a passage on the motion that's on the floor, and you have to take some other action.
Darren,
Would it help us to change the wording to give us some background information?
can.
Submit background information and take the application word away from it? Would the wording help us? Is there another word that we could use? It's like Bill said, just to have a little bit of information.
I haven't seen the application. I don't know what
Well,
you're
this is the
asking.
first time I've seen it, but can we change the wording that would help us to get away from the word? If the concern, what I'm hearing is the application, that we're putting in an application for a job, can we change the wording and say, can you provide some background information?
I don't think what you call it is gonna make any difference.
Okay.
It's, what are you collecting the information on? How are you gonna make your decision on what you're collecting? How do you make your short list, okay, to make it easy? You go through a pile of them, if there's 2,200 or just 20, come up with your short list, and then you need to get back together on how you're going to decide which one of those people you're going to talk to about the position and ask the questions that you need, and you do it here in a public forum. You don't invite the public to participate, just they can hear what the discourse is. The front sheet are all things that would eliminate anybody that can't say yes, yes. Okay, are you currently registered to vote at the address above? Are you qualified to vote in Morehead City municipal elections? If any of those are no, you eliminate them because they don't qualify to sit in that seat. Conflicts of interest, no, that's okay to ask for if people understand what you're asking for. employment, civic background, resume, legal and financial status. The felony question is a qualifying thing, but there's the secondary aspect. Have you regained your citizenship? So a felon can sit there as long as they're past the process and are back in citizenship. And current property taxes, utilities, and other obligations, yes, no, if that's what you want to know, that's fine. I don't know if these are all the qualifying things that you want on your application. They're certainly okay at first blush. I might change some of it, but it's, don't think of it an application, even though that's what we're calling it, is tell me about yourself. Okay? Why do you want to be a council person? That should be what you're focusing on.
Did you say something about financial bank? What do you want to know, their credit rating or something?
No, it's not that much. It's,
Are you current
have
on
you ever
all
been?
Morehead City property taxes, utilities, and other obligations?
That is not something that is necessary, in my opinion, to add.
You think?
But the rest of it, you know, I don't have too
Remove
much
that.
trouble. It is simply, as Derek just stated, tell me a little bit about yourself. If I don't know Henry Smith, who sent me an email, doesn't mean he's not a good possibility. I just don't know anything from his email. This helps me to give some information and to think. So how do we need, because as Sean stated it, you know, we do have room to have these questions about the application and what it looks like. Can we eliminate the question dealing with payment status, financial issues, because that is a very private matter. I can recognize that every day I've sat on this council and made decisions, we had the potential of being sued. There ain't an attorney out there that wouldn't sue if they could think of half a reason to do it for their financial benefit. That's a risk we have, no matter what process we take. Let's get the application, make sure we have all the names gathered. Within 3 weeks, have the meeting and get this person appointed and put them to work. We have the most important committee question before us in the next few months. We have asked at the last council for a resolution stating that we want to be excluded from this onerous requirement that takes away our right as a municipality to control building and planning, zoning restrictions. We need somebody capable on the planning background to help address. Let's fill those vacancies. There's a need. Let's find the best person to fill that need and other needs. So I'm ready to call the vote, asking for an application, as I've suggested the modification, and resolution. If you want to put a date on us, let's put a date on us, and let's get going.
So you're saying an application just to open it up to anybody and everybody and not just people that have already expressed interest?
That's right.
I would accept applications, I think, is general enough. If we want to tweak this application that's to be turned in, can be done. Doesn't have to be this particular application with the motion that's on the floor. You may want to consider, why do you want to be a council person? Broad. And have you ever served on a council or other government position before? And have them explain. Might be 2 criteria. In other words, what I'm saying is get questions you want asked. I'll look them over and tell you if you can't legally ask that.
And make it
Get
short.
that application to be more informative for you when you're looking through these so that you can make a selection on neutral basis, that is, not the things that will get you into trouble, but things that you would use to maybe qualify somebody to be able to sit in.
So if there's a question that we would like to be looked at, we could just send it to you, and then you could send it to all the council.
I would rather not have 20 more questions. Let's try to
Right?
get.
I mean,
down to two
there's
or
a couple
three.
of questions that I would like
Yeah,
to be considered, so.
because,
That are not on here.
because you're going to take applications according to this motion. That application can be formatted slightly different than what we've got here. You gotta get an application, might as well get someone that tells you something you wanna know. I mean, you've got, as Mr. Walker has said, you gotta figure out a way to qualify those that you believe are qualified for the position of council, and you need a little more than this to be able to do that. At least enough to be able to make an inquiry yourself as to, okay, why'd you say this, or why'd you say that? You gotta come to a conclusion, and you gotta have a way to get there.
Any more discussion? There's no more discussion. We have a motion on the floor to go through an application process for appointment to fill vacant at-large city council seat. Okay. All in favor of that motion, raise your hand. I say aye. Okay. All that oppose that motion, raise your hand. There is a 2-2 tie vote on that motion, and with me being the mayor and having the power to break a tie, I vote to go through the application process to appoint to fill vacant at-large city council seat. So motion carries 3-2. Okay, the next item on the agenda is discuss how the city will proceed in filling the full-time city manager position. So staff has, they have given us, this piece of paper right here with, recommendations or possible options. One is an internal search. Under this approach, the city's internal human resources HR staff will manage all aspects of the city manager recruitment process, including advertising, application review, screening, and interview coordination. Another option is hybrid search. A hybrid model would split responsibilities between internal HR staff and an external search firm, with elements of the process handled by each. While this may appear to balance cost control and expertise, professional search firms are often reluctant to enter such arrangements. And the last option is external professional search, which is recommended by staff. In an external search, the city contracts with a professional executive search firm to manage the city management recruitment from profile development through finalist presentation. These firms specialize in public sector leadership placements and bring established processes and networks. So, council, any discussion?
You know, we are, let me move forward. We are in a position where we don't have a city manager. We do have a very capable personnel administrator. In our past, we have gotten a number of applications for our jobs, sometimes 15, 20 applications. The disadvantage of going to a search company is those guys are damn proud about what they do, and it's an expensive process. But they are professional in the fact that they deal with municipalities, the needs of municipalities, and they have the mechanisms in place to do adequate research. I am not a person that favors running around to all of our neighboring cities and trying to find somebody local because they're local. I believe in casting a wide net to get all the applications that we can, and then have a professional group to weed them out, check their security, check the criminal, all of the stuff that we are legally obligated to do. So I prefer the last group, cast the net, obtain a professional management company that has the manpower. Remember, we have 2 vacancies on the council, in the city manager's slot. This is a time-consuming process, and send us a reduced verified list for the council to manage and work from along with staff. So I like the professional recruitment process.
Is that a motion?
I would
That
make
motion?
that as a motion, yes.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion on the floor by Councilmember Taylor, second by Councilmember Harvey Walker. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor indicate by raising your hand. Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, that was our last item of business. With no further business to discuss, meeting is adjourned.